Yo, top 10 movies of 2021. Welcome to the goddamn Evil Broomstick channel. It's like a week into 2022, but I've been rewatching some movies to make my list perfect. I've been watching other people's top 10s to see like what are some of the movies I missed that I need to go watch. Now I feel like I'm quite caught up. There's 3 movies I haven't seen that, fuck it, I'm gonna make the list now anyways. I never saw Power the Dog. I haven't seen Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza yet. The one I really wanted to see and I just haven't yet is Ridley Scott's The Last Duel. So those won't be on my list. They might have, who knows. Honorable mentions, A Quiet Place 2, The French Dispatch, Cruella, which I actually really like Cruella. I didn't think I was going to, but I just loved it was about a fashion designer. I loved like how passionate she was for making clothes and everything. I really like Cruella. I thought Emma Stone was great. Quick plug, Etsy.com/evilbroomstick. Buy yourself a fucking horror hat. This is a Friday the 13th hat. This is a Killer Instinct hat. I got a Ghost Story hats. I got the Babadook hats. I've got Xenomorph hats. Etsy.com/evilbroomstick. Go buy something. Go buy a painting. Whatever. Check it out. What was I talking about? Cruella, honorable mention. A24's Lamb. It's an honorable mention. Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. Will Smith's King Richard, and one that was so close to making the list. I kept going back and forth between this one and my number 10, but it's Spencer. I really love, I think his name's Pablo Larraín. I should have looked this up, but I really love that director's style. I love Jackie. I love Spencer. I like that he does like not such traditional biopics. He does like these sort of weirder, stranger films. I think Spencer's one of the best edited movies of the year. It was awesome. I think Kristen Stewart should win the Oscar. Number 10 on my list is Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up, at times, I was like, this movie's feeling kind of long. It has its slower, boring parts. It's from Adam McKay. I liked The Big Short better. I liked Vice better, but I still really like Don't Look Up. It was one of the funniest movies I saw this year, and I just think everyone needs to watch this movie to see what idiots we all are. Because I really believe if this were happening, if the world was in a planet-ending scenario, this is how it would play out. Nobody would take it seriously. Everybody would make memes about it for months, and then it would become this giant divisive thing where you're either on the left side or the right side. It'd be this giant political thing where you can't get along. You're either on the far left or you're on the far right, and you guys are bickering over the most minimal thing like fucking mask or whatever the fuck. Don't Look Up just shows what idiots we all fucking are, and all of us. And in the end, the spoilers for the movie. In the end, the world ends as it should, because humanity doesn't deserve to be saved, and they could have stopped it, but they didn't because they're all too stupid. Number 9 on my list is Candyman, which wasn't a remake, turned out to be a sequel. This wasn't a great year for horror movies. I love horror movies, and it was kind of a disappointing year. But Candyman was one that surprised me because I thought it was going to be dog shit, and it was actually pretty good. I think the third act is the weakest part of the movie, but the first 2 acts is like pretty fantastic. I thought there were aspects that they did better than the original Candyman, and then I think there's aspects that the original Candyman did better, but I think they're both like, they're a great 1 and 2 of a sequel that came out like 30 years later. Number 8 on my list, Nicolas Cage's Pig. Nicolas Cage comes out with like a strange indie movie, a couple of them every few weeks, I'd say. And usually he's losing his mind and going batshit insane in them. But what I loved about Pig, it's slow, it's subtle, it's reserved. It's one of Nicolas Cage's best performances ever. It's one of his best movies ever. And it's just about a man that wants to get back to his fucking pig. And you learn more about his character as the movie goes on. You learn about how much he meant his community and how he was like sort of a big figure in his community. But he just wants to get his pig and go back into hiding in the woods. And I related to this movie watching it because I feel like I was sort of like, I used to go out way more and I used to hang out with way more people. The longer like life has gone on and the older I've gotten, I just want to fucking go hide in the woods in a fucking cave with my dog and cease to exist from society. I want to exist to myself, but just cease to exist from society. Just like Nicolas Cage does in Pig. And I also love, there's this beautiful scene where he's talking to a chef about how what he used to dream for, what he used to be passionate about, and how he's allowed these real people in this world that really mean nothing to change what he was passionate about and to change what he loved. And I love that scene, and I really love Pig, the whole movie. Number 7 on my list, and there's going to be spoilers for this movie when I talk about it, is Spider-Man No Way Home. Spoilers. The first half of the movie, I did not like that much at all. The second half of the movie, I loved so much that it made it onto my top 10. People complained that there wasn't a Sinister Six in this movie, which is like Spider-Man's like great villain team is the Sinister Six he goes up against, but there was only 5 villains in this movie. The Sinister Six is in this movie. The 6th villain is Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man. He fucking teams up with the villains. He brings the fucking villains home in the movie when they were captured, when they were locked up. He frees them, takes them home, and then they kill his Aunt May, and he cries about it. It's his fault Aunt May died, because he's literally makes so many stupid decisions in this movie that I can't even understand Tom Holland's Peter Parker. But in the second hour of this movie, Tobey Maguire, who... my favorite live-action Spider-Man movie of all time is the very first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. That's my favorite live-action Spider-Man movie. I also liked Andrew Garfield's, I'd say, Amazing Spider-Man I don't like. Amazing Spider-Man 2 I did like. I know it's a fucking mess, but I thought Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone as Peter and Gwen had such amazing chemistry that they made that movie work so well, and the ending is just so sad, and I love that his character got redemption by catching MJ. And just seeing the 3 of these, because Tom Holland is actually my least favorite Peter Parker. I still do like him, but I love Tobey and Andrew more. But seeing the 3 of them interact, work together, it was just one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a movie, where you've seen like 3 series all interconnect now. It's just crazy. And it's something that's never really been done in movies before. And it was very cool to see in this Spider-Man movie. Number 6 on my list is Edgar Wright's The Last Night in Soho. I didn't watch any trailers for this movie. I didn't know a thing about this movie other than that Edgar Wright was directing it and Anya Taylor-Joy was starring. I went with my girlfriend to see it, telling her it's going to be a comedy movie, because I was like, it's Edgar Wright. He made Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Shaun of the Dead, Baby Driver. It's going to be a funny movie. Neither of us were expecting a fucking dark, depressing horror film about a girl like being tortured and like losing her mind in London and being haunted by ghosts and being creeped out by men. But I was kind of blown away by this movie, and it just went down so many different routes, and I was constantly intrigued, and like, I do wish that I don't watch trailers for movies. This was a case I kind of wish I watched a trailer for it, just so I had some sense of what to expect, because it was giving me anxiety watching it. But it was like a real ride to watch, and I can't wait to watch again, because I was thinking about this movie for months afterwards. Number 5 on my list is James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. It's crazy because the 2016 Suicide Squad definitely was on my top 5 worst movies of the year. I hated that movie. This one's on my top 5 best. It was one of the funniest movies of the year to me. It was the best comic book movie, superhero film of the year. It was just like, it wasn't like Spider-Man where it was like meh and then like amazing. Suicide Squad was just like consistently good the whole way through. I like the fucking giant starfish. People hate on it. I liked it. I like that line where he says like, I was happy just floating in space looking at the stars. And then humanity's selfishness took him in and tortured him and experimented on him for decades and made him a villain. You know, he's not really born a villain. I love seeing Idris Elba and John Cena interact off each other and just everything. I think some of the action scenes could have been handled better. Like, mainly, like, one with Harley breaking out of prison. I was like, you could have made this, like, John Wick levels of good, but now no one's going to really remember this action scene. Like, I hate action scenes where the hero is untouchable. And in that scene, she takes out like 30 prison guards without getting a scratch on her. I would have liked to see some adversity. I still really like this movie. And like, I like that it has a fucking giant like shark that's like a little baby. And I like the giant starfish. It's just silly. Ratcatcher 2 is pretty cool. Number 4 on this list is Bo Burnham's Inside. I've seen some people like say this doesn't count as a movie, or it's a comedy special, or it's a documentary. I don't care. I don't think this was the strongest year for film, and I needed films on my top 10 list, and one of my favorite things I watched all year was Bo Burnham's Inside. It's essentially about a man documenting an entire year during the pandemic, and it's all like shot, filmed, edited, acted, written, everything by Bo Burnham. And he's just in this one room, and he's just fucking losing his mind, making amazing music, making incredible commentary on society and everything that's going on with this pandemic. And it's just really like eye-opening and kind of profound, and something that everyone should see. And it's just also very entertaining and just so much fun. I didn't have a similar experience, but I feel like a lot of people can relate to Inside. A lot of people who like lived alone and then they lost their jobs. Like, my job never ended during the pandemic. It stayed going the whole time, so I still kind of kept up with, like, my life wasn't changed as much as some people, but a lot of people did experience what Bo Burnham experienced, of just like being stuck inside 24/7 and only leaving the house to go on these like supply runs, but you have to be scared of everyone else. And it was kind of cool to see someone document that and document what it was like. Number 3 on my list is one I'm so happy is number 3 on my list. It's James Bond 007 No Time to Die. Because I was so disappointed by Spectre. I probably dislike Spectre, the 4th James Bond movie in this Daniel Craig James Bond series. I probably disliked it more than most people. I was so disappointed, so bored by that movie. But he has officially gone, like, start out with Casino Royale, which I still think is the best one. And it was amazing. And then the second one, Quantum of Solace, sucked. And then the third one, Skyfall, was pretty great. And then the fourth one, Spectre, sucked. And then the fifth one was pretty great. So every other one is great in this series. Might as well call it a trilogy and forget 2 and 4. No Time to Die was great. It had like the emotional impact, probably more emotional impact than any of this James Bond Daniel Craig series. And I just really loved it. I loved the opening. I loved his romantical relationship with Léa Seydoux going on. That whole storyline in this movie. And the ending just really like hits you pretty hard and can bring a tear to your eye. Number 2 on my list is Dune. The only reason I went back and forth so many times between my number 1 and number 2, Dune never surpassed my expectations. It was my number 1 most anticipated movie of the year. It's rare when one of those movies ends up this high and ends up at my number 2. I love pretty much everything about this movie. Denis Villeneuve is probably my favorite director working right now. Blade Runner 2049 is probably in my top 5 movies, definitely top 10 movies of all time. I've watched that movie more times than I can count. I'm a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve, and I think he's directed so many of the best movies of the decade. And I think this could be another one. It ends pretty abrupt. A lot of people have said it. It's Dune Part 1. I've read Dune Part 1, the book. I haven't read Part 2 yet. I'm going to read Part 2 before Dune Part 2, the movie, comes out. But it definitely has a very Fellowship of the Ring ending where once it ends, it's like you're halfway through a story. There's no real resolution. So I think I might love this movie more after I see Part 2. But until then, the first half of this overall movie I thought was pretty amazing. And just Denis Villeneuve, everything he does, the scale of his movies, the cinematography of his movies, the whole vibe of his movies. I just love his slower paced sci-fi. I loved Duke Leto Atreides in this movie. I wish he was in it more. There's a lot of things like that I loved reading in the book that I kind of wish played out for longer in this movie. I could have watched a 3.5-hour cut in this movie if it was like everything from the book I got to see play out as long as I want. Mainly Duke Leto Atreides. I wish he was in it more, but this movie was great. Dune was awesome. I can't wait to see Part 2, and this was very close to being my favorite movie of the year. It's like scope-wise, it's one of the most beautiful, gorgeous like movies you could have seen in the theater all year. I hope most people or everyone saw this in the theater. My number 1 favorite movie of 2021, the best movie to me, is A24's The Green Knight. This was my So my number 1 and my number 2 flipped. My second most anticipated movie of 2021 going into the year was The Green Knight, and my first was Dune. Dune's my number 2 best of the year. Green Knight's my number 1 best of the year. Green Knight blew me away, and there's still things, if you rewatch that movie, you don't have all the answers still. This is a movie that you could debate about the ending and the meaning of multiple things for years to come, unless the director comes out and just spoils it all and tells you what his real interpretation is of all these things. But this is like an indie fantasy epic, if that makes sense. It's an indie epic. It's fucking the best cinematography, one of the best performances of the year with Dev Patel. I love Ralph Ineson from The Witch, and he plays the Green Knight in this movie. And I love fantasy movies. This movie speaks to me so much. It's like dark horror Lord of the Rings, dark horror fucking Game of Thrones. And it's just like this epic journey this character goes on, and he learns so many lessons throughout the story, and he just continuously fucks up and shows like what a dishonorable, this whole movie, it's about honor, and like you're only worth as much as your honor that you hold, and it's about this dishonorable knight learning by the end of the film to become an honorable man, because he sees what his life would be if he continues this way, and the miserable life that he would live. So he learns ultimately how to become an honorable knight through these tests that he continuously fails, but then in the very, very end, he succeeds and passes his test with the Green Knight. It's an incredible story. The most underrated movie of the year, because some people said it was great, some people didn't like it. Nobody's talking about it in the end of the year awards. I think it's the most underrated movie of the year. No Time to Die is also up there, but I love The Green Knight. There's my top 10, and The Green Knight is directed by David Lowery, the same guy who did A Ghost Story. Really big fan of him, and I can't wait to see what he does next. Number 10 on my list was Don't Look Up. Number 9 was Candyman. Number 8 was Pig. 7 was Spider-Man No Way Home. 6 was Last Night in Soho. 5 was The Suicide Squad. 4 was Inside. 3 was No Time to Die. 2 was Dune, and number 1 was The Green Knight. That's my favorite movies of 2021. I'm going to be doing my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2022 sometime in the next few days. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'm going to get the fuck out of here and eat something. Peace out. Later. 2022. Hopefully it's better than 2021. I like 2021, but really like... sometimes, like, there's my top 10 of the year. It's like so many good fucking movies. I'm like, all of these could be number 1. This time, it's really only my 1 and 2 that I, like, loved, like, so much. Like, Dune and Green Knight that are gonna be, like, you know, all-time rewatches for me. The rest were all really good. Pig was fucking awesome. Watch Pig. Peace out.